What is it that makes Lincoln such a seminal figure in our story?
Closely, 10 seconds. Oh, he's hurt. Could he finish him here? Connor!
For it concerns his very right to be free. And I, of all men, must win it.
Outstanding head movement by Anderson. Like we said, second to none.
I want to know if there's an alternate universe out there. One that is unlocked by the key of imagination, where Abraham Lincoln wastes no time training in politics, but rather trains to abolish men. Would Honest Abe have what it takes to go toe-to-toe with Conor McGregor? You've just crossed into the Alt Zone.
In Lincoln's day, the common combat sport was wrestling. Lincoln was regarded as a champion wrestler, so much so that he is enshrined in the Wrestling Hall of Fame, boasting a record of 299-1. It is easy to conclude that if born today, Honest Abe may take a liking to the world of mixed martial arts. But becoming a UFC champion takes determination, skill, grit, and a little bit of luck. Those who have taken on this title have not only been elite athletes, but also put in the work and dedication required to complete such a phenomenal task. So, what would set him apart from UFC legends? Let's set the foundation for this idea by digging deeper into Abe's wrestling history. The ability to grapple is a necessity to compete at any MMA level. As noted by professionals within the sport, grappling is possibly the most important skill.
If I was going to say what discipline's the most important, I would say wrestling. If you look at the majority of world champions, the majority, except maybe a couple weight classes, they're dominated by wrestlers.
Like I had mentioned, Abraham Lincoln has found himself in 300 wrestling matches, according to some historians. His most famous match was against the leader of the Grove Boys gang, Jack Armstrong. They were known for giving newcomers a rough time and challenging men without much resistance. One day, the group stumbled upon the future president and a match began. After some dirty moves here and there from Armstrong and his group, Abe decided he had had enough and threw him aside like a rag doll, winning the match and the respect of the Grove Boys gang. It's likely that the style of wrestling used around this time was a form by the name of collar and elbow. As the name suggests, the bout begins with a hold of one another at the collar and elbow. This style meant the wrestler would need to rely heavily on their legs while also using the opponent's weight and momentum against them. To win hundreds of these matches, Lincoln would have to be a master at these techniques, something that would translate well to the UFC. Whether on the ground or standing, the grappling skills that Lincoln would have could be used to keep a foe from striking, or he could knock them out with a powerful slam. Now, obviously, comparing legendary sportsmen from an earlier era isn't easy. The basketball and football players of the past wouldn't be as skilled as the players today, but assuming they would have been provided the same training and knowledge, I'm sure that the Wilt Chamberlains and Jerry Wests of the world would be able to still compete at a high level. This same logic should be applied to Abraham Lincoln's wrestling abilities. To have one career loss should speak to the fact that for his time, he was an absolute beast at the sport. We've established Abe's ability to wrestle, but what about all the other areas of skill? Lincoln wasn't just a wrestler, he is also known to have competed in a sport called fives, which is a sport similar to racquetball or tennis. It is also said of Lincoln that he lifted heavy objects with the best of them and served as the end man in tug of wars. From this information, we can gather that Abe was agile, mobile, and athletic. He has all of these capabilities while also being 6'4" with somewhere around an 80-inch reach. It is undeniable that Lincoln has the physical attributes to, at the bare minimum, develop the skill sets of a Brazilian jiu-jitsu or boxing ability that could be added onto his world-class level of grappling. We've now constructed a president that has the physical components of a UFC fighter, but there is more to any sport than just being strong and athletic. Is Abe going to be willing to put in the work to be great? Many athletes are gifted genetically, but the ones that perform at the highest level put in tens of thousands of hours of training. When it comes to a great work ethic, well, Abe is that guy. As a boy, he grew up doing hard work, the work of a farmer and of a rail splitter. As a rail splitter, his work would entail splitting logs with an axe in order to make fences. As he grew older, he studied to become a lawyer and then went into politics. It is undoubted that this work ethic is what guided him to be such a successful president. His presidential accomplishments that came from this work ethic are best summed up by Michael Scott.
Abraham Lincoln once said that if you're a racist, I will attack you with the North.
It is easy to imagine Lincoln putting in work with a top MMA gym and then dedicating just as much time to studying film the same way an NFL quarterback would if he were preparing for the Super Bowl. Our president turned UFC fighter is almost complete. We are just missing one key component that every champion has, a Mamba-like mentality.
You got here already. But now the only thing different that's going to get you to the top 15 is mental. And then from 15 to 10, the only difference between those guys is mental. And then from 10 to 5, same thing. And then from champion and everybody else, it's a mentality thing. It's just something that to do with IQ and something. That's the only thing that changed. Like, we're all good. We're all at the mecca of fighting. The UFC is where everybody wants to be. But what makes you a champ? What makes me a champion? You not. Something gotta be it. Like, you can lift more weights than me though. You know what I mean? Like, if we're the same weight class, you're stronger than me. You're faster than me. What is the difference?
What is the difference?
I believe it's that passport to crazy land.
Does Abe Lincoln have a passport to crazy land like Max Holloway is saying? I think so. Take this story, for example. In 1842, a 33-year-old Abraham Lincoln criticized a man named James Shields. Shields was a politician and United States Army officer who didn't take a liking to being criticized and challenged Lincoln to a duel. I could end my point here. If you're alive during an era where dueling is legal, then you're probably a freaking nutcase. Anyway, Lincoln accepted the duel. The customary rules for duels at the time were whoever was challenged would be allowed to choose the weapon. Abe went with the obvious choice, cavalry broadswords of the largest size. The day of the duel arrived and the two men met at Bloody Island, smack dab in the middle of the Mississippi River. This was an ungoverned island that allowed for duels even after the state of Missouri had them outlawed. The spot would host things from boxing matches to cockfights, and on September 22nd of 1842, it would be the location for Abraham Lincoln's famous last duel. However, the duel, it didn't last long, as the 6'4" president-to-be swung his sword high above Shields' head and slashed down through a large tree branch, displaying his power and lengthy reach. Shields quickly realized his disadvantage and the two men came to a truce without any bloodshed. This is a great example of the Mamba mentality. Lincoln simultaneously is ready for action while striking fear into the heart of his opponent. Through his impressive display, he stops his opponent in his tracks and then shows him mercy with the truce. Now, the Mamba mentality, or the passport to crazy land as Max Holloway calls it, it doesn't just mean you are out of control. It instead uses these emotions of anger, determination, and fear and directs them solely into a single desire of winning at all costs. I think the best example of these opposing ideas can be found in two basketball players. The first, Draymond Green, an emotional guy to say the least. He's a 4-time NBA champion for the Golden State Warriors. At times, this guy is able to control his emotions and use them to impact a play in the most meaningful physical moments, or at other times, the emotions control him and he costs himself and the team a championship. The second player is Kobe Bryant. Bryant was the master of controlling his emotions. He wasn't emotionless. He was pissed off, angry, and stubborn. But all of these emotions were directed towards the goal of winning. One example of Bryant pulling off the art of emotional control comes in a heated moment with Matthew Barnes of the Orlando Magic. The two were in an intense battle that culminated in a baseline inbound where Matthew Barnes tried to cause Kobe to flinch by flashing the basketball in front of Kobe's face. The move, it didn't faze him. A true display of staying calm in the heat of the moment. I think it's safe to say Abraham Lincoln displayed this. Whether it was here in this duel, delivering the Gettysburg Address, or through destroying slavery. All of these are moments where losing control of your emotions could have resulted in much different outcomes. Abraham Lincoln clearly has the heart of a champion, the passport to crazy land, and the Mamba mentality. Now, there is one flaw to Abraham Lincoln that I must bring up. Even with all of his greatest attributes, the grappling ability, the physical power, strength, and length, his champion mindset. This flaw is ultimately why I couldn't see him as a champion of the UFC. I won't be liked for bringing this up, but I'm someone who must report the facts, and the fact is that Abraham Lincoln has a blind spot.